Pod SaaS, where we're putting the SaaS back in sassy. Sponsored by LeadrPro, where you can book demos with target customers on demand and fill your sales pipeline instantly.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Pod SaaS. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we've got Mike from elteve. How's it going, Mike?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. Can't complain. You're in Denver, is that correct?
Yep, Denver, Colorado.
Awesome. Cool. Before we dive into your story, and I know you've been a multiple founder, so before we get into that, but we'd love to understand, what is elteve? Who makes a good customer for you guys?
Sure. So LTV, a nice play on words of lifetime value, and that's what our company, represents. But what our app does is enable Shopify and WooCommerce merchants to leverage the extra real estate on shipping labels to create and place cost-effective QR code ads and personalized offers. Essentially, we're pioneering a brand new ad medium that merchants can now control and monetize. And it's the last touch point on the buyer's journey to get them to come back for more.
Got it. Very cool. And who makes a good customer for you?
Currently, it's Shopify, WooCommerce, SMBs to enterprise retailers, but any in-house Shopify merchant as well as third-party logistics providers for the brands as well.
Fair enough. Sounds good. Before we dive into that, elteve and just kind of like where the idea came from, because it's super interesting. We do a thing called rapid fire questions where we get to know the entrepreneur a little bit better on a deeper level. Nothing too crazy, but if you're down, we can just jump right into it.
Yes, please do.
All right, cool. First question is super simple, but favorite entrepreneur and or startup story. Could be two separate or one of the same.
Sure. One of my favorite entrepreneurs, obviously everyone says Elon, but Marcus Lemonis, I believe is his last name. He's that guy that was on The Prophet on television, but I loved his character of being able to roll up his sleeves, go into businesses that are failing, but were established at one point, reinvigorate them, give them a new vision and some new capital and turn them around. So that's something that I really respect and appreciate somebody even at a later stage, like a venture capitalist like himself is willing to do.
Awesome. That's a good one. Next question here is, going back to when you're like 8, 9, 10 years old, do you remember what you wanted to be?
At one point, I like to talk. So at one point, I think I was very interested in potentially politics, lobbyism, and or a lawyer. And shortly after a couple stints in internships in local government and big government, I saw, God, how difficult it really was. So instead of selling other people's ideas, I decided to sell my own.
Very cool. Next question is most painful experience, and this can be personal or professional. And just for some context, I think periods of most exponential growth typically stems from places of extreme discomfort. So has there been any experience that in hindsight, obviously was a great learning, but when going through it, obviously was maybe difficult or trying?
Yeah. This is my third entrepreneurship, objective here. The first two, I went, the first company I co-founded, which was a brick and mortar and e-commerce business, I went a year without a paycheck. The second one being a SaaS based inventory management, warehousing, and fulfillment platform, I went 2 years. So yeah, after you go a few years in the course of maybe a 10-year span, it does affect your well-being and stress levels and things of that nature. But if you're willing to be an entrepreneur, you need to be 100% committed and understand the resource you provide or raise needs to go towards the company.
Absolutely. That being said, you speak about a lot of things that I'm familiar with too, in terms of just the personal financial sacrifices a lot of times that entrepreneurs or founders take, right? Because not everybody's has the luxury of getting, venture capital or any kind of funding necessarily. And a lot of times you're in that incubation building phase, which requires a lot of time and sometimes capital if you're not a technical person, to kind of like build out a product, right? That being said, in those moments where it is super trying, it is super difficult, what is pushing you or motivating you forward?
I love to create. I love to build. I was a corporate man at one point and understood the structure and process associated with that. But at the end of the day, I really like solving problems, being creative, and leading phenomenal teams and empowering them.
Fair enough. And with the stresses that come with, just being an entrepreneur or founder, is there anything you personally go to decompress?
Yeah, exercise, a good book, yoga, breathing, and some meditation.
Awesome. Those are all good ones. And as an entrepreneur, right, you pick up a lot of different hats along the way. Has there been a skill set that you never thought that you would pick up, that you've either loved or hated?
Yeah. Battling social media is a constant, challenge these days between all of the intricacies of privacy and costs and so on. So I'd say I think I'm okay at it, but it's definitely not something I enjoy managing as much as I probably should.
Fair enough.
That's something that's a constant battle, staying on top of social media.
Next question is two parts. So, do you have a bucket list? And then number two is, what is one of the more ambitious items on that bucket list?
Oh, I mean, I would love to travel for an extended period of time overseas. I love culture shock and things like that. So anything to get my head out of my head, and a nice way of putting it, really does well for me. So would love to take like a solid year of just multiple countries, traveling, getting back into culture and everything else that you tend to feel like you lose as an entrepreneur.
Fair enough. And the last question here is the idea of legacy, or, more importantly, what kind of impact do you want to leave on this world before you leave it?
I really want to make a positive impact. I'd love to be known for something that empowers merchants and retailers in the direct consumer space. I also really, I want to have a family and kids and a healthy, happy life. So health is also important and something you can't disregard as an entrepreneur, because at times we all can do that quite easily.
Absolutely. And that rounds out our series of rapid fire questions, but want to dive into here a little bit more about your journey, right? So, you had mentioned that you had wanted to dabble a little bit in the political system, working for local as well as nationwide governments. And you did a stint there, I noticed, from kind of like your LinkedIn profile, before kind of like ending up as a sales leader. Can you walk us through kind of like what that experience was like, and then how you ended up doing sales, and then ultimately starting your own company?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was young, I really had a passion to help people and solve problems, and government is, that's what they're supposed to do. But quickly in local government, I saw local municipalities not wanting to do what's best for their residents and constituents. Then I did an internship for a congressman in Pennsylvania on Capitol Hill, and I saw, who really ran government, and a lot of it was lobbyism and money, and there was kind of a negative side to it that really turned me off. Lawyer-wise, I thought about being a lawyer, but I really wanted to be a trial lawyer. So I realized, God, 5% or less goes to trial, and that wasn't something I wanted to do. It's just paperwork. So those would be the things I'd say.
Fair enough. And then you ended up in sales afterwards. How did you end up there? Was it more along the lines of like, that was an organic fit towards your personality and kind of like your background at that point? Or was there any other interest, that you were...
Yeah, on that note, I guess I've always had a knack and like talking. Yeah. So at the end of college, I graduated from Penn State University. I actually had a close friend of mine go, "Mike, you are a talker. You should consider sales if you're not going to be a lawyer or a politician." And at Penn State, I actually got a job right out of our career fair for an engineering firm, a very large Japanese automation company that's on the Nikkei. I was no engineer. I was a communications journalism type of major here. So I worked my butt off for, God, a year, 10, 12-hour days, and then it just clicked. And I learned and taught myself that if I could learn to sell something and consult on something that I had no background doing, I could sell anything. And there's a similar process that applies to every industry. And that was something
Absolutely.
that I found was very gratifying and intrinsic.
Got it. So you learned a lot of like your sales skills and acumen from that first few years of that experience, and then um, I mean, like fairly quickly, I'd say you ended up starting your first company, and you're now 3 companies in. But what was that leap like, and walk us through, why you left something that was stable and comfortable, like you already alluded to earlier, for something a little bit more risky and inconsistent.
Sure. I was becoming very, very specialized in our industry, and I had gotten to management, and about that 8, 9, 10 year mark, I was concerned and had spoken with coworkers that, I was close to becoming a lifer.
Huh.
And that kind of scared me because I just saw my coworkers bounce from competitor to competitor in a very fixed space. We were highly compensated, but your leverage to change and do new things started becoming very narrowed. And then in addition, when I moved from Redondo Beach, California for that company to Colorado to open a new office, I was traveling every week for years, multiple cities covering the whole mountain state, West Coast. And that was something that was my breaking point, and I couldn't figure out another way to stay in the industry without traveling. So I decided, my cousin turned me on to an idea. I decided to open a brick and mortar in e-commerce. And go figure, I was at the infancy of omni-channel fulfillment, where I had my e-commerce store out the back, I had my brick and mortar up front, and my accountant is going, this is an accounting nightmare. You can't just pull inventory from one side to the other. There's different tax ramifications and blah, blah, blah. So I got an open-based point of sale system called Revel at the time, but nothing was built out from the API. My one of my buddies was a technical person and became my first CTO of Ship Relay, and it developed into basically everything I needed as a retailer. Outsource fulfillment, being a small brand with not a high amount of volume but needed personalization, and that actually led into us building Ship Relay, which is a SaaS-based inventory management, warehousing, and fulfillment platform that is still in existence. I exited at the end of 21, but we have 2 warehouses, one in Los Angeles and one in Memphis, Tennessee, doing national and international warehousing and fulfillment for the likes of Shopify, Amazon, eBay, you name it.
Got it. So going into that world, right? Let's talk about Ship Relay real quick, because you go from your first business, which is like not super technical outside, of obviously building out this e-commerce business, but then jumping into SaaS, like a SaaS product. As a non-technical founder, then having a technical founder, like I feel like everybody who's like a non-technical founder kind of gets to this epiphany of like, oh, we can build that. Right. Like using coding and using technology or software that you can actually build pretty much or automate pretty much anything. If you know what the workflow or the process looks like. Was there any particular epiphany or realization of that for you personally? Or was it always something like you already kind of knew we could solve this with technology, and it's just kind of like waiting for the right problem to spend time on?
No, I think it really just kind of came organically. My buddy and CTO of Ship Relay, he had already founded a SaaS-based drop shipment platform in the early days of everything being drop shipped directly from China, and did very well. So he had a lot of expertise in the mechanics behind that, and that was a couple $1 million a year company. And then things changed and they sold that off. So he was looking for new opportunity. And when I was saying, hey, wait a minute, I have the same need and I'm a local retailer here in the US, and I could tie the problems as merchants and direct to consumer retailers had with his expertise of trying to source the products and have them drop ship for those merchants, we merged that together, and I think that was the epiphany there.
Got it. Okay. So the next question here is, how do you make you mentioned you exited towards the latter part of 2021. At that point, what was the reasoning for you to jump into LTV? And, were you a co-founder of the business? Were you, coming in as a CEO, or what was the circumstances for you to join another kind of like earlier stage company, right? Because like obviously at this point it's hard to even just to get to where you got to with Ship Relay. You know what I mean? Like it's statistically speaking is just probably like, don't know what the outcome was, but like even to get to some kind of outcome like that it's the odds are stacked against you from the beginning. So why do it again?
That's a good question I ask myself. When I exited, I was ready to try something new. I found after about, 6 years of anything, it's good to reinvigorate yourself and learn new skills. I felt like what I had done was set the foundation for that company and done what I could and hand off the reins to a new CEO and do something new and potentially even bigger. I in between though, there was a few months where I took a little bit of time and, even entertain potentially going back to the corporate world and or, YC type startups that I was actually pretty connected to think, do I want to be the CEO again? Do I want to take all the risk and stress and everything that comes with it? And, I was on the fence, and surprisingly, I had quite a few people go, are you sure you could go work for somebody again? And I go, yes, of course. I can always work for somebody. We're all working for somebody, whether it's yourself or somebody else. But it definitely threw me for a loop to think, wait a minute, I have such skill sets now that might be underutilized in certain areas that turn me off from going back to the corporate world. So here I am, and I'm very excited I decided to do that. And with LTV, what's unique about this opportunity is I was actually scouted for this company. There was actually a prior CEO who unfortunately wasn't able to produce much during COVID. We have a patent on our technology. We had a legit board, and we still do, and venture capital backing, but the CEO prior failed. And unfortunately, the company was not willing to continue to try to grow it with him at the leadership. So based on my background in direct-to-consumer, QR codes, label brokerage, and you name it, through networking, one of my buddies at a local fund here in Colorado had heard of this company that was called Onsert Media at the time. So I came into this as what's kind of called an operating CEO, which is a unique role where I have this skills and expertise to come in and clean things up. So to me, it is very challenging, but it's also pretty unique. And I joke that if I can pull this off, then I can go into other companies like Marcus Lemonis does and try to save them. And I don't need to come up with the idea anymore. If there's the right idea, a lot of people have the right idea. They just don't know how to execute. And that's something I see that I've learned to excel at. So I don't care if I come up with another idea anymore.
Fair enough. And so, going through the journey now as a operating CEO, ultimately, and then as opposed to previously kind of like being a founder and then having the reins from day one, what's kind of been the differences, pros, cons between those two experiences?
Yeah. Coming into a company that had been managed so over the last few years, there was a lot to clean up. There were internal politics from board members to past shareholders who had issues based on the history and so on. So that has been something that has been challenging to navigate. But I lean on my top, advisors and VC contacts about how to manage that and just stay focused on the prize and what my job is, which is, meeting the obligations of all shareholders and reporting to the board. So that level of professionalism and having a real board of real venture capitalists has been eye-opening and pretty impactful.
Got it. Yeah, you had mentioned too before, right? Like that you've gone through periods of your life, 2, 3 years, where you haven't taken a salary, where, you know, you're really kind of like focused on just getting something to market or building a product or building a solution. Um, can you take us through kind of like what that experience was like? What did you learn from it? It's one of those things that I think most entrepreneurs will have to go through at some point in time, right? Like they're going to have to go through a period of intense struggle to a certain degree. Very few have I seen are, the ones that get a check and just go and build. It's a lot of times, even when they get to that stage, it's probably like their third, fourth, venture at that point where they've already built the relationships and they've already had that experience of like failing and learning from those previous ventures, but still having to go through the experience of making sacrifices. So can you talk us through what that was like? How did you rationalize that decision? Because I think psychologically, that's something that's very difficult for a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs, people who are kind of like sitting on the sidelines to kind of like wrap their head around.
Sure. Well, one thing I'd like to say is how I think important it is to go work for somebody when you're young.
Yeah,
The structure and the process I learned from the Japanese and that large international company is something I was able to bring from the get-go to these startups to give it some structure and not it being all over the place. So yeah, that company really set me up for obviously sales acumen, but also really just process,
huh,
understanding the process and why you have to do things, even if you don't like them, and what the value is and the ROI. And I was actually pretty successful with that company. So fortunately, I had a nice nest egg that allowed me to do the last two companies. But
sure,
no, I could have never taken the risks I did if I didn't have that nest egg and made good decisions on some investments, and then they'll take all those smart decisions and throw the dice again to see what it
sure.
lands, is not something that's easy. So I do highly recommend work for somebody else, get experience, figure out a niche, make sure you have balanced your life and money in the bank. And that's the best way, even knowing it's very difficult to try to get this going. But support, advisors, and more support.
For sure. Um, yeah, on that note too, when you talk about support, I mean, what has been some of the types of support that you've gotten, or relationships, or mentors, advisors, that has been most critical in your journey? Because yeah, I just try to every question I ask, I try to mirror like personally, kind of like my entrepreneurial journey and kind of the things that's happened in my life, and I can definitely attribute, I think, um, on one hand, probably like the different types of individuals that have made such a significant impact, where the path of my life would be pretty drastically different and contrasted to the other side had I not met that individual or gone through that experience, given that opportunity that that individual presented. So, has there been any of those types of like key individuals in your life?
Absolutely. Starting with my father, who has been a corporate man his whole life, and now he consults, but it's really a small business. He told me he had reservations for years about working for very large companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers to Barnes and Noble, you name it. It resonated with me about being, as I called it, a very sharp tool, but a number for large companies. So yeah, that's something that, motivates me in that regard. And what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, just any other individuals, advisors,
Yeah,
mentors.
I'd say I have an advisor right now who IPO'd two companies, sold two others, went through the gamut per se. One thing that is wonderful is that he was also an advisor for me of my last company, Ship Relay.
Huh,
So having him still as an advisor going forward in this company, oh, he reminds me all the time of the things I may or may not have done well in the last company,
yeah,
and keeps me focused. As a CEO of a new startup, venture back, You have pretty much about 5 responsibilities: vision, key hires, raising money, setting up the processes, and the culture, right? I mean, those are the main things you have to stay focused on outside of sales, marketing, and everything else, the legality of it all. But staying focused on me empowering folks and raising the resource to allow them to do what they're good at doing is the key here. And I think any entrepreneur can say that they at any given time are doing too many roles, and that can be a recipe for disaster.
For sure. A couple more questions as we kind of like round out the time here. But next question is, what's the current stage of the company in terms of like the size of the team, traction to date, and where do you see the immediate opportunity looking like over the next 6 months to a year?
Sure. Yeah. So we're just towards the end of this pre-seed stage. We have live clients working MVP out in the world for self-service for Shopify and WooCommerce merchants that ship in-house. Next phase that I'm already in the midst of is we've integrated into a last mile delivery carrier who now can leverage our ad tech, MarTech on the shipping labels as a whole new revenue generator. I'm also working with third-party logistics, offering them a new revenue stream and a sticky feature set to accommodate their merchants that want to outsource to them. So it's quite a 3-phased approach. And where we're going with this, which is pretty phenomenal, is we're actually creating a marketplace. So we empower merchants to leverage the shipping label for their space. Down the road, we're actually going to allow you to leverage, sell, or broker your available parcel space on the shipping label or the inside. Now allowing people to tap into each other's customer bases and organically do one-to-one co-marketing and collaboration. And that has the eyes on it from the affiliate marketing world, who I've spoken with some key players who look at this going, wow, you're a new publisher potentially for all of the ads. So that's the big vision that really gets me out of bed every day.
That's very interesting. So almost like utilizing packaging space as advertising space.
That's exactly what we're doing. It's monetizing it for revenue, retention, post-sale experience, because our QR codes can go from an AI chatbot that knows what's in the box to help you set it up. And if you get frustrated, it directs you to a live agent, to a discount code, to a great location for a post-purchase customer survey if they didn't fill it out on the website. And for retargeting. And again, we see ourselves used in conjunction with other retargeting technologies like text and email. Someone purchased from you, you sent them a new offer for the matching pants for the shirt. Well, when they receive those pants, they scan that QR code. We're not plagued by cookies. We see that action. Then they go to the landing page, but don't convert. You should be able to take that data points and that journey and then leverage that back into, let's say, Klaviyo or any of your email text messaging. Hit them now with a bigger offer saying, hey, we saw you had interest in this. The pants wasn't the needle mover, but maybe the pants plus a new edition of something at a very high discount will be. So there's endless use cases for this product, and that's something that really attracted me to it.
Super interesting. Very interesting. Last question here is, where do you see the company in the next 4 to 5 years? I mean, you have mentioned that every 6 years, it's nice to kind of learn a new skill set or kind of get your feet wet into another pool. But do you see yourself with LTV for the long term and, kind of fully being at the helm, realizing the maximum potential of what this could become? Or do you feel like it's a situation where, again, more operational, more of trying to take it to the next level and then repeating that process again with a different company?
With this opportunity, I see major potential for acquisition. There are large players like Amazon, Shopify, BigCommerce, any label broker like ShipStation that this type of play bodes quite well, and I'm having conversations with them. So No, my goal and with any venture capitalist is to sell the company or have it acquired. So this company is all about getting the revenue and the traction, and if we are fortunate enough to sell off the company and liquidate it. But if not, this thing can be a very profitable private company. And I don't mind staying at a very profitable private company, being the CEO and incentivizing myself and the executives as best we need.
Sounds good. Fair enough. Seems like you have a very direct and very clear path as to where you guys want to be, or where you also want to end up to be in the next few years here. So definitely wish you nothing but success, and really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us.
Well, thank you, Chris. And again, I just want to throw out there, LeadrPro is excellent. The feedback and the meetings we've gotten are great.
Got it. Very cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, we'll see how it continues to work out and transpire, but it's definitely similar boat as where you guys are, just getting to market fit and trying to scale it up as fast as possible.
I know the feeling.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris.